The galaxy had always been full of light and life, but everything began to change when the endless swarm came. It started at the edge of known space. A quiet world called Uranus was the first to fall. The people of that world had never known war. Their skies were filled with cities that floated and oceans that shone with living light. But then one night the stars above them went dark, and a wave of metal creatures descended from the void. They were like nothing anyone had ever seen. They did not speak. They did not stop. They simply consumed everything they touched within hours. Uranus was gone, and the signal from that world ended with one broken word: help. The Solari Dominion was the first to respond. They were proud and old, and they believed no force in the galaxy could defeat them. Their fleets had ruled for thousands of years. Their soldiers had crushed every rebellion. Their empire stretched across 1,000 systems. They sent a fleet of 300 ships to investigate what had happened to Uranus. The admiral in charge laughed when he heard the word swarm. He said, nothing in this galaxy can move faster than the Solari fleet, and nothing can survive its fire. But when his ships arrived, there was nothing left. Not even dust. The planet was a black sphere floating dead in space. They searched the area for signs of attackers, but there were none. Only a strange metallic fog that clung to their hulls like dust. It began to eat away at their ships from the outside, and then from within. By the time the admiral realized what was happening, it was too late. Half his fleet was gone. He ordered the rest to retreat, but the fog followed them, spreading through the warp lanes like a living storm. And from that moment, the Solari Dominion began to fall. The swarm was not alive in the way normal beings understood it. It had no home and no purpose other than to consume. It did not negotiate or rest. It spread from one world to another, devouring everything that moved. Every world it touched went silent. Even machines stopped working. The stars around those systems dimmed as if the swarm swallowed light itself. The Solari scientists tried to study it. They sent drones and probes, but none returned, and the few that did sent back strange images of endless metal plains stretching to the horizon, and skies filled with silver clouds that moved like waves. The other civilizations watched in fear. The Vakari Confederation locked their borders. The Talon Republic sealed their gates, and even the proud Tsar Collective retreated to their core worlds. No one wanted to face the swarm. They believed it would eventually stop after it had eaten enough. They thought it would burn out like a fire left without fuel. But the fire did not stop. It only grew faster, stronger, wider. World after world fell until even the Solari homeworld began to prepare for evacuation. Their once bright empire was now only a line of desperate strongholds, trying to hold back the endless tide. And still no one understood where the swarm had come from. Some said it was born from a failed experiment in artificial life. Others said it was a weapon built by an ancient race long dead. Some whispered that it was punishment from the gods for the pride of the galaxy. But the truth did not matter. What mattered was that nothing could stop it. The war dragged on for years, and in those years the map of the galaxy changed. Entire regions became dark zones marked only by silence. The stars themselves seemed to fade as the swarm moved closer. The remaining fleets of the Solari gathered around a small group of systems that formed a natural barrier. It was called the Narrow Line, and beyond it, there was only one way left to reach the rest of the galaxy. That path led to a small, quiet system circling a yellow star. It was known by a forgotten name: Sol. The Solari sent scouts to that system. They expected to find another empty world, but when their ships entered the outer edge, they detected strange signals. They were not natural. The signals repeated the same message again and again in dozens of old languages. It said, "This region is under human protection. Turn back." The Solari officers looked at each other, confused. They had never heard the word human before. They searched their databases and found nothing. No records, no history, no sign of any such species. The admiral in charge laughed again. He said, "Whoever these humans are, they must be fools to claim space in the path of the swarm." He ordered the fleet forward, but something strange happened as they moved closer. Their sensors detected a single large object floating near the third planet from the sun. It was enormous, nearly the size of a small moon. Its hull was scarred and dark but still alive. Its surface was covered with marks and burns as if it had fought 1,000 battles and survived. The admiral ordered a closer look, and as they approached they saw faded letters painted on its side: UNS, Dauntless. The Solari technicians tried to translate it, but the meaning was unclear. They assumed it was a derelict, a relic of some lost civilization long gone. The Admiral prepared to move past it, but then the Dauntless sent a signal, a single line of text transmitted. On every frequency you will not pass. The Solari fleet stopped for a moment, then laughed. They thought it was an old defense system repeating a message left behind. They ignored it and continued their course. The Dauntless did not move, but when the INE first Solari cruiser crossed into its boundary space, its systems went dead instantly. Its engines shut down, its weapons failed, and its lights went out. Seconds later, it vanished from the sensors without a trace. Panic spread through the Solari formation. The Admiral demanded answers. His scientists could only say that the cruiser had been hit by an unknown energy field. Something beyond their understanding. The Admiral refused to believe it. He ordered the rest of the fleet to fire on the Dauntless. Hundreds of plasma bolts and rail slugs filled the void for a moment. It looked as if the stars themselves were exploding around that single ship when the fire stopped. The Dauntless still stood untouched. Then it returned fire, one shot, one beam of white light that cut through space in silence, and half the Solari fleet disappeared. The remaining ships scattered in terror. Their sensors blinded, their communication lost when the light faded. The Dauntless was still there, unmoving, cold, but alive. The Admiral sat in silence. He did not understand what he had seen. He ordered his remaining ships to retreat, and for the first time in his life, he felt fear, not of the swarm, but of the humans. In the following days, more fleets approached the system from other civilizations, refugees and soldiers alike, all searching for a place to make a final stand. They all received the same message. This region is under human protection. Turn back. Some ignored it and vanished. Others stayed at a distance, watching the dark warship that seemed to guard the system like a silent guardian. It did not speak again. It did not move. But every time a probe or ship came too close, it disappeared without sound or trace. Soon the rumors began to spread across the galaxy, whispers about the humans, about a race that once walked among the stars and then vanished. Stories said they were older than the Solari, older than the Dominion itself, that they had fought wars long before any of the current powers had risen. Some said they had destroyed themselves. Others believed they had simply gone into hiding, waiting for a time when they were needed again, and now that time had come, as the swarm continued to move forward, devouring everything in its path. The eyes, people of the galaxy, began to hope that maybe the humans were real. Maybe they could stop what no one else could. The Solari command sent a final message to the Dauntless asking for help. There was no reply, only silence. But when the swarm reached the edge of the Sol system, the Dauntless moved for the first time in centuries. Its engines lit up with a light brighter than the nearby star, and its weapons came alive with a hum that echoed through the void. The galaxy watched as the old ship turned to face the darkness that had consumed everything else and stood alone between life and extinction. That day marked the beginning of a new story, a story that would be remembered long after the stars themselves dimmed the day, when a single human warship barred the path of destruction, and the galaxy learned that even in the face of endless death, there were still those who would stand and say no. The galaxy was quiet after that day when the Dauntless moved for the first time. Many who saw the light from its engines could not believe it was real. Some said it was an illusion. Others said it was a machine possessed by ghosts of an ancient race. But deep down, every captain and every soldier who had witnessed that sight knew that something old and powerful had awakened. The Dauntless stood at the edge of the Sol system like a wall of metal, and light its surface, scarred and broken, yet alive and full of purpose. The Solari fleet that had once tried to pass now floated at a distance none dared to approach again. They watched from far away and waited to see what the humans would do. The endless swarm moved closer. It was not a fleet like others. It was a storm made of ships and machines that looked like insects mixed. With fire, it did not have leaders, it did not have fear. It only knew how to destroy the stars behind it, dimmed as it came closer, and every signal it passed went silent. The swarm did not care about warnings or borders. It had already eaten hundreds of worlds, and the Dauntless was only one ship against thousands. The Solari admiral who had escaped the earlier battle sent messages to every nearby world asking for help, but no one answered. The other empires had already fallen back to defend. Their own homes they had given up on the outer systems. The Admiral looked again at the Dauntless on his screens. It did not move much. Its hull was covered in strange markings, symbols that no one could read it. Looked old but not weak. Every now and then he thought he could see movement on its surface like living shadows, working, repairing, refueling. But he could not be sure. It could have been his imagination. His crew whispered among themselves, saying that maybe there were no living humans inside. Maybe it was an ancient machine left to guard this place. But deep inside, the Admiral hoped that somewhere inside that great ship, there were real people, real humans watching the stars and waiting. When the swarm reached the first planet of the system, a small frozen rock, it did not stop. It melted the planet in minutes, turning ice into steam and rock into dust. The Admiral felt his chest tighten as he saw the light spread across. The screens, the Dauntless still did not move. It seemed to be waiting. The swarm split into many smaller parts. Some moved toward the sun, some toward the outer planets, and one group directly toward the Dauntless. The Admiral held his breath. Every officer on his bridge watched in silence, wondering if the humans would run or fight. The Dauntless sent out one message on all frequencies. It said, "Stand down. Leave this system or be destroyed." The voice was human, clear, strong, and calm. The Admiral froze. He had never heard such a voice before. It was not proud or angry. It was full of something heavier, something like sorrow. The swarm did not respond. It continued to move forward like a tide of metal. The Dauntless powered up its main weapons. The light from its engines grew brighter until the sensors of nearby ships began to fail. The Admiral ordered his ships to move back. He did not want to be caught in what was about to happen. Then the battle began. The swarm attacked first. It sent waves of small ships that moved faster than bullets, each one filled with weapons that burned through armor. They hit the Dauntless in thousands, but the great ship held its shields flashing like lightning. Each hit sent ripples across its hull. But none broke through. The Dauntless answered with silence, then with one burst of light. It fired a beam that split the darkness. The beam tore through the swarm ships, cutting them apart like dust in the wind. The Admiral watched in awe. His crew whispered. In disbelief, it was as if the humans were using the power of a star itself. The swarm kept coming, wave after wave. It learned quickly, adapting its attacks. Its ships began to spread out, trying to find weak points. The Dauntless responded with calm precision. Every movement was measured, every shot exact. There was no panic, no chaos. It fought like a being that had done this countless times before. The Solari fleet could only watch from far away as the sky burned and space itself seemed to bend. From the force of the battle, the Admiral realized that the Dauntless was not just defending. It was studying the swarm. It was testing it, learning its movements, its weaknesses. Its rhythm hours turned into days. The battle raged on without pause. The swarm poured everything it had into that single system, but the Dauntless refused to fall its weapons, never stopped its engines, never dimmed. The Admiral began to understand that this was not a random defense. This was a plan, a trap. The humans were not just fighting to protect their system. They were buying time. Every signal from the Dauntless was carefully timed. Every pulse of energy seemed to be drawing power from something deeper, something in the heart of the system. The Admiral sent a probe closer to study it, but before it could reach the Dauntless, it vanished as if swallowed by light. The Admiral could not sleep. He watched the battle every hour, trying to understand who these humans were, how they had built something so powerful, so enduring. He ordered his scientists to search old archives for any mention of the name UNS Dauntless. They found fragments of records dating back thousands of years, long before the Solari Dominion had risen. Those records spoke of a species called humans that had spread through the stars, quickly building great fleets and fighting terrible wars, and then suddenly disappearing. No one knew why, but one story said that they had faced something very similar to the swarm and had beaten it. The scientists said it could not be true. No species could survive something like that. But the Admiral looked again at the battle before him and knew the truth was standing right there. By the third day, the swarm began to change its tactics. It sent massive ships the size of cities covered in armor so thick it could crush planets. The Dauntless did not retreat. It turned its cannons toward them and fired beams that tore the darkness apart. But even the great ship began to show signs of Strain its hull cracked in places, its shields flickered. The Admiral could feel the tension in his chest. He wanted to help, but his fleet's weapons were nothing compared to what was happening before him. He knew that if he entered the battle, his ships would be destroyed in seconds, so he stayed back watching helplessly as the human ship fought alone. Then something unexpected happened. The swarm began to retreat. It pulled back slowly like an ocean tide. The Admiral did not understand why. The Dauntless had not destroyed them completely. It could have chased them down, but instead it stayed still, its weapons cooling its lights, dimming slowly, as if it were tired or mourning. The Admiral realized the battle was over. The swarm had been stopped, at least for now. The Solari crews cheered in disbelief. They could not understand how one ship had done what entire empires could not. The Admiral sent another message of thanks to the Dauntless, but there was no reply, only silence. Days passed, and the swarm did not return. The Dauntless stayed in its place, floating quietly near the edge of the system like a silent guardian. The Solari fleet kept its distance, but every day they sent small signals, words of gratitude and respect sometimes. They thought they saw lights on the Dauntless moving across its surface, as if people were walking inside repairing it, keeping it alive. The Admiral began to believe that the humans were not gone, that they were watching, waiting for the next storm. Story of the battle spread across the galaxy in secret channels through whispers and coded messages. People who had lost everything to the swarm began to believe again. They said the humans had returned. They said a single ship had faced the end and survived. The broken fleets of other species began to move again, drawn toward Sol, seeking safety or answers. Some wanted to join the humans. Others just wanted to see the Dauntless. With their own eyes, they came quietly, afraid of what they might find. But when they reached the edge of the system, the same message greeted them. This region is under human protection. Turn back. Some obeyed, and left. Others stayed at a distance and waited. In the darkness beyond the system, the swarm gathered again, millions of its ships drifting together like a black ocean, preparing for another strike. The Solari Admiral knew it would come soon. He also knew that the Dauntless would stand again when it did. He could not explain how he knew it, but he felt it. In his bones, humans were strange beings. They did not give up even when logic said they should. They did not surrender even when the universe itself told them to stop. And as long as even one of them still breathed somewhere, the Dauntless would never fall. The Admiral looked out his viewport one last time at the glowing shape of the great human ship and whispered a small prayer in his own language. Not for himself, but for the humans, whoever they were, wherever they had come from, and for the strange hope they had given to a dying galaxy. The galaxy held its breath after the battle. The story of the Dauntless spread like a quiet fire through the broken remains of fallen empires. The Solari, who had once ruled half the known worlds, now spoke in whispers of the humans. The name itself had become something powerful and mysterious. Ships that had once been enemies began to send secret signals to one another, asking if the stories were true. Some believed it, others said it was only a myth to give hope to the desperate. But those who had seen it with their own eyes knew that the Dauntless was real, and that it was waiting. The endless swarm had been pushed back but not destroyed, and everyone knew that it would return. The Solari Admiral who had survived the first encounter with the Dauntless could not rest. He spent every hour studying the few recordings his ships had taken before their systems failed. He played the same images again and again, the light from the Dauntless's weapons cutting through the dark, the calm, steady movements of a ship that seemed to think like a living being. He had fought in hundreds of battles, but never had he seen such control. He wondered what kind of people could build something like that. What kind of minds could fight with such calm when facing an enemy that had destroyed whole empires? He wanted to speak to them, but the Dauntless never replied to his messages. One day his science officer brought him something strange, a faint transmission coming from near the Sol system. It was week-old and full of static, but it carried a voice. It was human. The officer worked for hours to clean the signal, and when they finally heard the words clearly, it was a message not meant. For them it was a record left long ago. The voice said, "This is Captain Elias Ward of the United Nations Starship Dauntless. If you are hearing this, then humanity is gone, and the line is yours to hold. Remember who we are. Remember what we fight for, and never let the dark cross the threshold. The Admiral sat in silence, listening to the same message again and again. He did not understand everything, but the tone of the voice shook him. It was not fear. It was duty. The scientists on his ship began, searching their ancient archives again. They found small fragments of information about the humans. Some said they had been explorers long before any other race had reached the stars. Others said they were destroyers who had burned their own worlds with war. But one record caught the Admiral's attention. It spoke of something called the Great Collapse, a time when humanity had faced an enemy that consumed everything, machines that spread like a disease across space. It was said that humanity had stopped it at a great cost, and then vanished, as if they had gone into hiding, waiting for. The next time the darkness came, the Admiral began to understand the truth. The swarm was not new, humanity had seen it before. Far away, the swarm was rebuilding in the black silence between stars. It gathered its broken parts, its fragments, and reformed. Its endless fleets it learned from its defeat, adapting, changing, growing stronger. The swarm did not hate it, did not think of revenge. It simply evolved. It knew that something powerful had stopped it, and it would find a way to overcome it. When it returned, it would not underestimate the humans. The next time it would come in numbers so vast that the stars themselves would tremble. Weeks turned into months. The Dauntless stayed quiet. It did not move again, but small lights continued to flicker along its hull like stars trapped within metal. Sometimes faint radio signals drifted from its direction, too weak to decode. But the Solari crews felt comfort knowing it was still there. Watching, guarding, when the swarm came back, they believed the humans would rise again. The Admiral began sending probes to map the nearby systems, each one careful to stay clear of the human boundaries. He discovered other old wrecks drifting in the dark. Some were of unknown design, but one carried markings. Similar to the dauntless UNS Vanguard, its hull was shattered beyond repair. But inside they found strange materials that could not be identified, metals, stronger than any known alloy. The Admiral ordered the wreck left untouched. It felt wrong to disturb it. Soon other species began arriving in the region. Refugees, traders, soldiers, all broken by war. They all wanted to see the place where the Dauntless had stood. Some came to pray, some to learn, some to beg for protection. The Admiral allowed them to stay at the edge of the system, and slowly a small community began to form. They built stations out of scrap metal from old ships, they called it Haven. It was a fragile place, but it gave the lost people of the galaxy something they had not felt in years: hope. They could see the Dauntless in the distance, shining faintly like a silent promise that someone was still watching over them. Then one night the Dauntless spoke again. Its voice echoed across every channel in the system. A calm, human voice said, "The swarm has awakened, prepare your defenses." It was the first time it had spoken in months, and every ship in Haven came alive with movement. The Solari Admiral ordered all ships to ready weapons. The engineers scrambled to power their shields, but deep inside they all knew that if the swarm was truly coming, nothing they did would matter without the humans. The Dauntless began to move slowly, drifting toward the outer edge of the system, as if preparing to meet something. In the dark, the sensors began to pick up faint signals, at first only noise, then shapes. The swarm was coming. The scale was beyond comprehension, hundreds of thousands of ships moving like a single living thing. The Admiral felt fear rising in his chest, but he kept watching the Dauntless. It did not turn back, it moved forward, its engines burning with light brighter than the sun. It was going to meet the swarm alone again. The Admiral tried to send a message offering to fight beside it, but there was no answer. The human ship continued on its path like a lone soldier marching into battle without hesitation. The two forces met in the middle of the void. There was no sound, only light. The swarm struck first, unleashing waves of energy that could have destroyed a planet. The Dauntless absorbed them, its shields flaring white. Then it returned. Fire beams of pure energy cut through the black clouds of the swarm, carving great gaps in its formation. But for every piece destroyed, 10 more replaced it. The battle was chaos made of silence and light. The Dauntless fought with precision, every move deliberate, every weapon strike exact. The Admiral watched from his command deck, helpless, unable to believe what he was seeing. The Dauntless was holding back an entire galaxy of death by itself. Hours passed. The swarm grew angrier, if such a thing was possible. It began to surround the Dauntless, trying to trap it from all sides. But the human ship moved with a grace that seemed impossible. For something so massive, it twisted and turned, using gravity itself as a weapon. The space around it shimmered with strange distortions like invisible walls, crushing anything that came too close. The swarm began to fall apart piece by piece until its waves grew thinner, slower, weaker, but still it fought on, and still the Dauntless refused to break. At the height of the battle, a strange signal burst through all frequencies. It was coming from deep inside the Dauntless. It was not a weapon, it was a message, the same message that had been recorded long ago. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the United Nations Starship Dauntless. Hold the line, remember who we are. Remember what we fight for." The voice repeated again and again, and somehow every being who heard it felt something change inside them. The Solari, the Vicari, the Talon, and even the smallest refugee ships all felt a pull. A spark of courage, they began to move forward, joining the fight, their small weapons firing uselessly against the swarm. But their hearts filled with strength, they were not alone. The battle lasted for what felt like forever, until at last, the swarm began to break apart completely. Its command cores destroyed its massive ships, drifting powerless through the void, and then just like that it was over. The Dauntless stood alone in the dark, its hull cracked and burning but still alive. Its lights flickered weakly. Then one final signal left the ship, a message that simply said, "The line holds." And after that, the Dauntless went silent. The Admiral felt tears in his eyes, something he had not felt in many years. He realized that the humans had once again saved them all, but he also feared that the cost had been too great. The Dauntless did not move again. It drifted slowly toward the light of Sul, as if returning home. The Admiral ordered his fleet to follow at a respectful distance. But when they reached the spot where the Dauntless should have been, there was nothing, only a field of glowing dust, floating like a sea of stars. The Solari and the others searched for months but found no trace of the ship yet. Even as they searched, they began to receive faint transmissions from all across the galaxy, old human frequencies repeating the same words. Again and again, for those who stand against the dark, you are not alone. The Admiral listened to that message every day. He knew the humans were not gone. They had simply gone where they were needed next, and wherever the darkness rose again, the Dauntless, or something like it, would return. The galaxy changed after the Second Battle of Sul. The swarm had been stopped again, but the cost was heavy. Many ships were lost, and the Dauntless had vanished, leaving behind only light and silence for many. The loss of the human ship felt like losing the last piece of hope, but others believed the humans had not died. They had simply gone somewhere. No one could follow the Solari Admiral, who had watched both battles, could not stop thinking about them. He had seen power beyond anything the galaxy understood, but more than that, he had seen purpose. The humans had not fought for conquest or pride. They had fought because someone had to hold the line. The Admiral spent months searching the space where the Dauntless had disappeared. He found nothing. No debris. No signal, only a faint energy trail that led toward deep space far beyond the known star maps. He sent probes, but none returned. He began to believe that maybe the humans had found a way to move beyond normal space, to hide from the swarm, or to prepare for what would come next. The other species began to rebuild using the time the humans had bought for them. Haven grew larger, becoming a small city of ships and stations orbiting the quiet edge of Sol's system. It became a meeting place for those who remembered what the humans had done. They built a great beacon at its center, with words carved in every known language. It said, "The line holds." Everyday ships arrived carrying survivors and stories of other places where strange lights had appeared, battles fought in silence that ended suddenly with victory. And every time they said the same thing, a single human warship had appeared, fought, and vanished. No one could prove if it was the Dauntless or another ship like it. But the story spread and became legend in time. Even children on distant worlds began to speak of the guardians from Sol, who would return when the dark came again. Some called them angels, others called them ghosts. But everyone remembered the name human. The Solari Admiral grew old, but he refused to retire. He believed the swarm was not gone. It was only waiting. The galaxy began to heal. Trade routes, reopened cities were rebuilt, and new alliances formed, but in the deep, cold parts of space, scouts still reported strange movements. Entire systems that had once been empty now showed signs of life or something pretending to be life. The Admiral gathered what was left of the old fleets and began. To prepare, he sent messages across the stars calling for those who still believed to join him at Haven. He said, "We cannot wait for the humans to save us again. We must be ready to stand beside them when they return." Among those who answered was a young captain from the Vakari people. Her name was Erin. She had lost her entire family to the swarm when she was a child. She had grown up hearing stories of the Dauntless and had promised herself that if she ever found a way to repay that debt, she would do it. She arrived at Haven with a small fleet of her own battered ships and worn-out soldiers when she met the Solari Admiral. She was surprised by how old and tired he looked, but when he spoke, his voice was still strong. He told her about the humans, about what he had seen and what he believed. Aaron listened quietly, and when he finished, she said, "If the humans come back, they will not fight alone." Years passed and Haven became more than a refuge. It became a fortress. They built defenses stronger than anything seen before, inspired by what they had learned from watching the Dauntless. The Admiral shared what little data he had about human technology, though most of it was beyond understanding. They managed to copy small parts like shield harmonics and energy-focusing methods. The result was imperfect but powerful, and for the first time in generations, the people of the galaxy began to feel safe again. The swarm had not returned, and some began to believe it never would. But the Admiral and Erin knew better. The silence was only the calm before the storm one day. A faint signal reached Haven. It was weak, almost lost in the background noise of space, but when they decoded it, the room fell silent. It was a human voice again, distorted and broken, but clear enough to understand. The message said, "The dark stirs. Again, hold the line, we are coming." The Admiral felt his heart race. After so many years, the humans were still out there, and they were watching the message repeated 3 times before disappearing. The engineers tried to trace the source, but it came from too far beyond the edge of the galaxy. Further than any known route, the Admiral ordered every ship to prepare. The swarm would return soon, and when it did, he wanted the galaxy to be ready. The signs came slowly at first. Small colonies went dark. Outposts stopped responding. Traders vanished on routes that had been safe for decades. Erin led a patrol to investigate one of the lost systems. What she found made her blood run cold. An entire planet stripped bare. Not destroyed, not burned, just gone like it had been eaten from the inside. She recorded everything and returned to Haven with the news. The Admiral said quietly, "It has begun." And soon after that, the stars themselves began to flicker on the edge of the galaxy. The darkness had returned. When the swarm came back, it was even larger than before, its ships darker, faster, smarter. It moved without warning, without hesitation. The first lines of defense crumbled in days. Entire sectors vanished from the maps, and the silence spread once again. But this time the galaxy did not run. It stood and fought. Every fleet, every soldier, every world that could fight joined the call. Haven became the center of resistance. Ships from 100 races gathered there, and at their head stood the Solari Admiral and Captain Aaron. Together, they sent a single message into the void to the humans: "Wherever you are, we stand ready." Days later, the swarm reached the outer systems near Sol. The battle began, and it was worse than anything they had faced before. The sky burned with light and debris filled the void. Haven's defenses held for a time, but the enemy was endless. Aaron's ship was struck and nearly destroyed, but she refused to retreat. The Admiral's command ship was surrounded. He watched the monitors as thousands of enemy signatures closed in, and for the first time in his long life, he thought this might be the end. Then it happened. The stars around them shifted, light bent, and a massive shadow appeared behind the swarm. It was a ship larger than any seen before, its hull dark, its engines burning white, and on its side were the same faded letters, UNS Dauntless. Every ship on the battlefield stopped for a moment as the Dauntless moved forward slowly and calmly, its weapons powering up with the same silent energy that had once saved the galaxy. It opened a channel and the same human voice spoke, "We told you the line holds, now stand with us." The Admiral laughed for the first time in years, tears running down his face. He gave the order to all fleets: attack with them, and the greatest battle in galactic history began. The Dauntless led the charge, its weapons tearing through the swarm like fire through snow. Its shields flaring bright, the combined fleets followed, every species united under one cause for the first time in history. The battle lasted for days. Every hour felt like a lifetime. The swarm threw everything it had at the humans and their allies, but the Dauntless did not break even when entire sections of its hull were ripped away. It kept fighting. The human voice continued to command calm, steady, guiding every move of the allied fleets until slowly the tide began to turn. The swarm faltered. Its formations broke its core. Ships began to fall one by one, and when the last great ship of the swarm tried to flee, the Dauntless pursued it into the dark. The two vanished together in a burst of light brighter than a star. When the light faded, the battlefield was quiet. The swarm was gone. The Allied fleet stood in silence, staring at the place where the Dauntless had disappeared again. Aaron looked out at the empty space and whispered, "Thank you." The Admiral, who had lived long enough to see it with his own eyes, smiled. He knew the humans had done what they came to do, and this time, he felt that maybe they were finally free. The galaxy mourned and celebrated at once. Memorials were built across countless worlds, statues of the Dauntless carved in stone and metal. The name human was no longer a mystery. It was a symbol of courage, unity, and sacrifice, and though no one ever found where the Dauntless had gone, everyone believed the same thing, that somewhere out there in the endless dark, the humans still watched, waiting for the next time the galaxy would need them again. Years passed after the great battle, and the galaxy entered an age of quiet peace. Though it was not the same as before, there was something new in the hearts of the people. A feeling of unity born from the shared war and the memory of those who had saved them. The name Dauntless became a legend, not just a story, but a symbol. Every child learned about the humans and the way they had stood when all others had fallen. They learned about courage, about sacrifice, and about holding the line. The great fleets were rebuilt not for conquest but for defense, and many ships carried the words "the line holds" painted across their hulls in every language. The Solari Admiral lived long enough to see this peace grow, but he never stopped looking to the stars. He often sat alone watching the empty void beyond Haven, where the Dauntless had vanished again. He believed the humans were still out there waiting, as they always did, ready to return if the darkness came back. But even as hope filled the galaxy, strange whispers began to spread again in the deep edges of uncharted space. Travelers spoke of shadows that moved without light, of old worlds that had gone silent, and of faint signals that sounded like the human voice. Sometimes people thought it was just an echo of the past, but others were not so sure. Aaron, who had become one of the most respected captains in the New Alliance fleet, also felt that something was wrong. She had fought in the last battle beside the Dauntless, and she still dreamed of that day of the blinding light and the human voice that said "the line holds." She believed that the humans had not died. She believed they had gone to fight something worse, far away from the galaxy, to protect it from afar. One day, as she was overseeing a patrol near the outer systems, her ship detected an unusual signal. It was faint, but carried the same pattern as the one that had once come from the Dauntless. She ordered the crew to follow it, and they soon found something that no one had seen before. A wreck floating in the dark. It was a ship, but not of any known design. Its hull was covered in marks like scars from energy burns and strange metal patterns that no one could explain. When they scanned it, the computer found traces of the same alloy used by the humans, the same impossible metal that did not decay with time. Aaron ordered a team to board the wreck. They entered through a broken section, and inside they found something even stranger. It was empty, completely empty. No bodies, no machines, only silence, and in the center of one room they found a small sphere still glowing faintly when they touched it. A light spread through the ship, and a voice spoke. It was human. The voice said, "If you are hearing this, then the war has reached you again. We have gone further than you can imagine. The enemy changes. It learns, it never dies. We hold them where you cannot see us, and we will hold them until the last breath. If you are one of those who remember, then be ready one day. The dark will move again, and you must stand as we did, hold the line always." And then the light faded. The sphere went dark, and the ship began to crumble. Aaron barely escaped before it fell apart into dust that scattered across space. She watched it disappear and whispered, "I will." She returned to Haven and shared the message with the leaders of the Alliance. The Council listened in silence, and then arguments began. Some said it was fake, a leftover echo from the war. Others said it was a warning, a call to prepare. But no one could deny the truth that something was coming again. Aaron spoke firmly and said, "We cannot wait until it reaches our worlds again. We must go where it began." She pointed to the edge of the map, the place where the Dauntless had vanished into the unknown. The Council hesitated, afraid to send fleets into that endless dark. But finally they agreed a single mission would go, led by Aaron herself. The expedition left Haven with 20 ships. They carried the best technology the Alliance had built: stronger shields, better weapons, and new engines designed from fragments of human design. They traveled for months through the void beyond known space until the stars grew thin and the light began to fade. They passed ruins of worlds burned to ash and broken ships that floated like ghosts. Aaron began to feel that they were not alone. Sometimes sensors detected movement in the dark, but nothing was ever seen. And then one day they reached it, a vast region of space where time itself seemed slower. The stars twisted, and their light bent around something invisible at the center. The scientists called it a wound in space, a place where reality had been torn open long ago. Perhaps by the final battle of the Dauntless, the readings were unstable. The closer they went, the stronger. The interference grew until their systems began to fail. Aaron decided to take her ship closer alone. She ordered the others to stay back and record everything as she moved forward. Her ship trembled. The view outside changed, showing flashes of battles, fire, lightning, and then silence. She saw shapes in the dark like massive ships locked in endless combat shadows of something beyond comprehension. And then suddenly a voice filled the ship. It was the same voice from before. Calm, steady, human. It said, "You should not have come this far, but you came because you are like us. You cannot turn away the enemy we hold. Here is not like the swarm. It is older, deeper. It moves through thought, through time. We stopped it once, but it learns it will come again. The galaxy must be ready, and when it does, you must not look to us. You must be what we were." And the image changed. She saw a human face, scarred, tired, but smiling. The man said, "Tell them, the line holds." Then the image vanished, and the ship was thrown back by a burst of light. When Aaron woke, she was drifting near her fleet, her ship damaged but still alive. The other captains pulled her out, and when she told them what she had seen, they all felt the same thing. A mix of fear and duty. They knew the humans were still fighting somewhere beyond the edge of everything, holding back something the galaxy could not understand. Aaron returned to Haven and told the Council everything. Some still did not believe, but others did, and quietly, they began to prepare again. They began to build new fleets, stronger, faster, more unified than ever before. They called the project Dauntless Rising. Under Aaron's guidance, the Alliance trained soldiers from every world together, teaching them not just to fight, but to think as one. She told them about the humans, how they never gave up, how they fought not for themselves but for everyone else. She made sure every recruit learned the same words before leaving the academy. The line holds soon. The Alliance became stronger than ever before, exploring further, expanding, building stations near the wound in space. To watch and wait. They did not know when the enemy would return, but they knew it would. And when it did, they would be ready. The years turned into decades, and the story of the humans became part of the way people lived. Their memory was not of mystery anymore, but of guidance. The humans had become something more than just saviors. They had become the standard by which all measured courage. Haven turned into the capital of a new united government, not ruled by one species, but by all together. And at its heart stood a great monument, a single shining wall carved with the names of every ship that had fought in the great battle, including the Dauntless. Every year, people gathered there to remember and to promise to hold the line. One day a strange light appeared in the sky above Haven, a bright flash that lasted only seconds, but every sensor in the system recorded it as coming from deep beyond the wound. The scientists said it was impossible, a signal traveling faster than anything known. But when they decoded it, the message was simple. One word, Dauntless. The whole galaxy heard it, and for a moment time seemed to stop. Then Aaron smiled. She was old now, her hair gray, her face marked by years but her eyes still bright. She whispered, "Thank you," and knew that wherever the humans were, they still watched, still fought, and still believed that the line must hold forever. Many generations passed since the last message from the humans. The galaxy changed again. Cities covered worlds, and peace lasted longer than anyone had dared to hope. Haven became a shining center of learning, trade, and unity. Its people lived under the promise that they would always be ready, and they would always remember. The line holds Arin's name became a legend. She had died long ago, but her teachings were still part of every academy. Every new officer learned about her courage and how she had seen the humans one last time. Her story was told in schools and across holoscreens. But with each passing century, fewer people truly believed that the humans still existed. Some said they had become myths, stories told to inspire children. Others said they had ascended beyond physical form and now watched from the stars. Yet a few still believed they were real. The new leader of the Alliance was a young woman named Kira. She had grown up hearing the stories of the Dauntless and dreamed of one day finding it again. She believed that if the humans had saved the galaxy, once they could do it again if needed. She studied everything about them. Every ship design, every battle log, every old transmission. She spent her life trying to understand what made them different, why they fought the way they did. She came to believe that it was not their weapons that made them strong. It was their will. They never surrendered, even when they were alone. They fought because they believed someone had to stand between darkness and light. And that was what Kira wanted to be. One day, as she walked through the great hall of Haven, she stopped before the monument of the Dauntless, the wall still shining with the names of those who had fought and died. The hall was quiet, but she could almost hear the echoes of old voices then. Suddenly, an alarm broke the silence. A strange signal had appeared far beyond the wound in space. The same region where Arin had once found the human message. The readings were unlike anything seen before, not hostile, not random, but patterned, a transmission repeating in regular intervals. The scientists analyzed it for days before realizing it was a message in human code. It took longer to translate, but when they did, it said one simple thing: hold the line. The words spread like fire across the galaxy. Old memories awoke. People who had never believed before began to speak of the humans again. The Alliance Council gathered at Haven, and Kira stood before them. She said, "This is not a coincidence. The humans are warning us something is coming. We cannot ignore them." She asked for permission to lead a new expedition beyond the wound to find the source of the signal. Some argued that it was too dangerous. Others said that the humans would not send a message without reason. After long debate, the council agreed Kira would go. She assembled a fleet of 50 ships, the strongest and fastest ever built, powered by new energy systems designed using fragments of old human data. The fleet set out with hope and fear together. The journey was long and silent. They traveled beyond known stars into places where even light seemed afraid to go. The darkness grew thicker the further they went, and strange distortions appeared around them. Sometimes the stars flickered as if something massive moved between them. The fleet kept going, driven by the signal that grew stronger each day, until one moment they reached its source. It came from a massive field of wreckage ships, of every shape and design, floating in silence, frozen in time. At the center was a giant shadow, half buried in dust and broken metal. The Dauntless. It looked old and scarred, its hull dark and cracked but still whole, its engines cold, yet untouched. By time Kira's breath caught, she had found it. She ordered her ship closer, and when they scanned it, they found power deep inside, weak but alive. She led a small team aboard, stepping through the airlock into the ship that had saved the galaxy. Centuries ago, the air inside was thin and cold, the corridors silent and covered in dust, but the walls still carried faint marks of human writing. She moved carefully through the halls until they reached the command deck, and there in the center was a chair facing the stars, still empty, but in front of it a console glowed faintly as she approached. The lights came alive and the ship spoke. "Welcome back," the voice said. Human, calm, familiar. "We have been waiting." Kira froze, unable to speak. The voice continued, "You are not one of us, but you carry our will. The enemy is moving again. It changes, it hides, but it always returns. We held the line for as long as we could, and now it is your turn." Kira tried to ask what enemy. What danger? But the voice faded, replaced by a new sound deep from within the ship. A hum that grew louder as power returned. Systems lit up across the Dauntless, one by one. Engines, shields, weapons, all awakening after centuries of silence. Outside, the other ships watched, in awe as the human warship came alive again, the ancient metal shining with light. Then space itself began to tremble from the far edge of the wreck field. Something moved, huge dark shapes rising from the shadows. At first they looked like rocks, then like ships, then something else entirely. It was the swarm again, but changed different. Larger, covered in strange energy patterns, the fleet formed defensive lines around the Dauntless, ready to fight. But Kira's ship received a transmission from the Dauntless. The human voice spoke again, calm and steady as before. You are not alone. Stand firm, hold the line. And then the Dauntless fired its first shot in centuries. A beam of light so bright it split the dark in two, and the battle began. The enemy attacked in waves, endless and silent. The fleet fought back with everything they had, but it was the Dauntless that carried them. The human ship moved like it was alive, its weapons firing in perfect rhythm. Every blast tearing through the swarm. Kira's ships followed its lead, forming patterns guided by the old human tactics. They had studied for years. The dark fleet began to falter, unable to break through the wall of light that the humans had built long ago. Kira watched in awe as the Dauntless fought like a living thing. And then the human voice spoke again. The enemy will not stop you. Must finish what we began. It is your turn now. And with those words, the Dauntless surged forward into the heart of the enemy. The light grew so bright that no one could see for a moment. Sensors went blind. Communications failed. When it cleared, the Dauntless was gone again. Only silence and wreckage remained. The swarm was destroyed. Its ships drifting lifeless in the void. Kira called for scans. But there was nothing, no trace of the human ship. Once again it had vanished. But this time she felt no sadness, only pride. She knew what the humans had done. They had given the galaxy its last lesson. The fight was never about victory. It was about standing when no one else would. She ordered her fleet to return to Haven, carrying the message that the humans had passed on. When they returned, the news spread across every world. The Dauntless had returned once more and saved them again. But this time, it had not come to protect it, had come to pass the torch. From that day, the galaxy changed. They no longer waited for the humans to return. They became what the humans had been. They built new fleets, stronger and faster. They trained together and swore an oath not just to fight, but to protect every world, no matter the species. They called themselves the Guardians of the Line, and their symbol was the image of the Dauntless forever. Holding back the dark, Kira stood before the monument on Haven. Once more, now changed forever. A new name carved beneath the old one. UNS Dauntless. Thorsakum, she smiled, knowing it was not a ship of metal or engines, but a promise every person carried within their heart. She whispered the same words, spoken by generations before her. The line holds and the crowd around her repeated it, a million voices. Echoing across the stars beyond the monument, a small light flickered far in the sky. Some said it was only a star, but others believed it was the Dauntless watching once more, keeping silent guard over the galaxy. It had saved so many times, and so, the story continued across time, across stars, across the hearts of all who believed that no matter how dark the night became, there would always be someone somewhere who stood between light and shadow, who fought not for glory, but because it was right. And though no one ever saw the humans again, their spirit lived on in every ship that carried their mark, and every soldier who whispered their words before battle. The line holds, and through that simple promise, the humans never truly left. Because as long as there were those who remembered them, as long as there were those who stood against the dark, the Dauntless and its crew would live forever in the endless light of the stars.